hungry.
The YouTube video. Yeah, that's Lucas. Can I still resign?
No,
I don't think I hear us.
I think so.
All right, we are set. We are recording. We are broadcasting.
Maybe this?
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. All right. Elizabeth, we're going to have some names pop up on the screen as people enter, or
Yeah, I am letting everyone in as we go. So we are good. We are live when we are rocking and rolling here.
okay, everybody be patient with us. Couple minutes to work out a bug or two here, trying to do this from several different locations.
All right, and then we are going to be muting everyone if you're not presenting in the meeting. So we will have the chat function open, but just so there's not all sorts of sound here. So if you're not muted, I'm going to be muting people. All right, I'll screen share the presentation and then you guys just let me know when to change slides and we'll be all set.
Okay. And how will I see more people that are joining us to do introductions, or do we want to just skip that part of the program today?
Maybe just skip that for today.
Okay.
And then we can work that out for next time. We'll put
All
that on
right,
our
so
next time.
then what we'll do then as we do calls of service, or else when we do DNS, we can have whoever is answering then introduce themselves that way. And we'll go from there. So welcome everybody. It's been a while since we've had our last compact. Hope everybody is doing well and will stay safe through all this. Again, this will be my first time with the Landlord Compact after all these years trying to do this virtually, but I think I can manage through it with everybody's assistance and help. Let's get to our negative impact. Is that the next slide, Elizabeth? All right. Okay, we can, one more. Here we go. All right. So list was created by a couple different ways, neighborhood complaints, near West Side, employee or ambassador complaints. And so we'll start right off with 761 North 29th Street, which is a Barada property. Do we have someone from MPD for calls of service?
Hi, yes, it's Officer Wittenberger from the CPU unit at District 3.
Welcome.
Regarding 761 North 29, there are no nuisance calls for this property.
76 North 29, no nuisance calls. Bobby, is there a way to turn up the volume just a little bit on this thing? Sorry, never used the laptop, this one before. Do we have DNS?
no orders.
Hey, David, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
No order. 2933-37 West Wells Street, Falcon Crest LLC or Barada.
We have 4 nuisance calls ranging from 911 abuse and trouble with subjects.
And DNS?
Yes, we have orders for cleanup.
Okay, as we go along here with everybody else, again, I believe, right, Elizabeth, they can comment. And then you'll see those comments come through. Elizabeth, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I just had to unmute. Yes, I should see them come through the chat.
Okay.
Looks like we have a couple.
Lindsay, I'm monitoring the chat here for
Oh,
comments.
great, thank you.
So you have that covered.
Okay, good, because then it blocks my screen. So what I want to mention is through the chat then, if anybody needs to add something or has a specific question in regards to any one of these properties, please send that through the chat. And then Lindsay, go ahead and interrupt me as we go along. And maybe we can answer or at least note the question. All right, then we'll get to the next property here. 2928 West Wells, calls for service.
There are two nuisance calls, 911 abuse and trouble with subject.
DNS?
Yes, we have orders. Basically, those are periodic orders, something that happens every year.
Okay. 2922 West Wells, another Barata property, calls for service.
There's 3 nuisance calls ranging from batteries and property damages.
DNS?
No orders.
2936 West Wells, calls for service.
1 call, and that's a 911 abuse.
We have orders again, periodic.
Abuse. Does that mean that the 911, there's been abuse of calling 911? Or
Yes.
does that mean something else?
No, it means abuse of the 911 phone number.
Okay, thank you.
Twenty-eight 36 West Wells, call for service. I'm sorry, we did 2936 and then now 2836, is that correct?
Yes, and there's 1 nuisance call, and it's threats.
And DNS?
Yes, we have orders. Exterior.
This is Elizabeth Kent and Bobby. Should I advance the slides to the property? Bobby made slides for each of the properties. Should I advance the slides forward here?
Yes, please.
Okay.
We have photos of each property along with some of the complaints. So if you could just go ahead to the next property.
Which one are we on here?
2836.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So these are a couple of the reasons why these properties are on that we've written down. Complaints of constant fighting at this location, suspected drug dealing, and noise complaints, loud music. And additional loitering at the same time. All right, thank you for that, Elizabeth.
I want to correct myself on 2836 West Wells. There are no orders.
Is there a way to take that off my screen now, Elizabeth, so I can then see the list? I don't have the agenda on paper.
Can we just advance to the next slide? It'll have the address right there.
All right. Elizabeth's in charge of the order. 2820 West Well Street, calls for service.
It is going to be 2 calls, nuisance calls, entries, and burglary. I'm sorry, battery, not burglary.
And DNS?
No orders.
So the complaint, as everybody can see here, public drinking and noise complaints at this location. Next slide. 761 North 29th Street. We actually did that one in the beginning, but it's public drinking, noise complaint, excessive loitering at this location. Next slide. Hold on a second. You can't hear?
Anyone from Barada Properties that would like to maybe give an explanation of what's going on?
Hi, this is Ariana and Roberto here on behalf of Browder Properties. Since then, we have been switching over to new security, and they are making more rounds for all the properties on Wells.
Okay, when did you guys kind of switch over?
I'm sorry?
When exactly did you guys switch over?
Within the past 2 weeks.
Okay, is this security guard, is it how many hours a day and what times of the day do the security guard operates?
They are here from 9 to 5. We have 2 security now instead of 1.
Okay, one of the things that we notice is that the activity picks up around 5 o'clock or a little after.
Yep, right after 5 when we leave. Yep, that's something we're discussing with our supervisor as well to see whether or not they can add security after 5 because we see that too.
Okay, and there's also been some reports of some gang activity that's coming out of you guys' buildings. And these reports is from more than one source.
From more than one source. We will definitely look into that to see what tenant is causing what, but I do see that it is a problem, specific buildings, well, the ones that you guys put up.
Okay, apparently MS-13 has come up from the south side, and there was a video of a arranged or organized fist-to-fist fight in the middle of the street. Several people blocked off Wells Street both ways, and while they, I'm assuming, betted on who was going to be the winner. So recently there has been a tremendous amount of activity on Wells Street, more than ever before. I'm not sure what happened in the last 4 weeks, but whatever, whether it's moving some people in, or maybe it's associated with neighboring properties, there is a lot of activity that is happening at this 2-block radius, more than ever before. So the sooner the better on the security issue and making decisions before more serious things happen in the neighborhood.
Yes, 1000%. There has been more tenants, and unfortunately, because of the virus, the office was closed for almost 3 weeks last month.
Gotcha. All right. Sounds good. We'll look forward to an update next month on these.
What you were thinking? Excuse me. Is that Roberto right there behind you?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things too, Roberto, that I have noticed that I believe that some of your maintenance guys are participating in the public drinking outside of the buildings. So that may be something that you might want to monitor.
No, hay que hablar también con Johnson y todos ellos.
All right, we'll talk to them.
All right, thank you. Next slide, 907 North 26th Street. We've got suspected drug dealing, excessive loitering, complaints of BB guns being used against residents. Calls for service.
There's 2 nuisance calls, a shots fired complaint, and trouble subject.
DNS. David, can you hear us?
Good seeing you guys. Hey, yeah, give me, you got my, just shoot me a call, bro.
Something just happened with my keyboard because I was able to talk, so now I have to use my mouse to talk. Yes, I can hear you.
Not next week, but the
Okay,
week after
any
next.
calls for, any DNS orders on 907?
No, there's not.
All right, thank you.
Next slide.
Right.
917 North 26th Street, suspected drug dealing, excessive loitering. Calls for service.
There's 2 calls, and it's fights and trouble subject.
And DNS.
No orders. Or excuse me, interior orders.
Thank you.
This is Bobby McQuay again. These are buildings owned by Kirk Kasdorf, and do they fit the nuisance status because of the cost for services and the types of calls that there are?
No, they don't.
Okay.
Because they're also the ones calling in asking for help. They call in, their management actually prematurely reached out to our office, resent a rent roll, they have a standing complaint form on file, so we're trying to work with them and help them. We also, our bicycle guys are aware of it too, so that they're requesting extra patrol and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone here from Kasdorf?
Yes, this is Colin Miller and TJ that we were representing. I think to address the shots fired, I think that was this week. And it was 2 cars that were driving by in front of our building that it was suspected that they shot at each other. And then to address kind of the excessive loitering, we've sent out emails, we posted signs. When we see anyone, when we are in the office, we are calling the non-emergency police to have a squad, come out. We have the standing order for non-tenants to be ticketed and then to be alerted of tenants that are loitering. And then also our security camera, for some reason, we have been getting, the security footage is not holding more than 24 hours. So we are having a contractor come out next week. We've been working with that for the last week or so to get up to at least 4 days of recording on file. And so we are looking at that every day. If we see people out, we're calling the police. So that's kind of the actions that we have taken so far. And the BB gun was something, so we are aware of the suspected drug dealing as well. And that's something that we are reviewing our security footage for to see exactly which tenants are doing that. And then for the BB gun, we were unaware of that until we received the letter. So we did send out an email to all tenants. We have seen firearms as well. And so we are posting no firearms allowed on the property. And then we're also going to be calling the police when we do see anyone. And we actually have already this week, I think 1 or 2 different occasions. And so those are kind of, those are the steps that we've taken thus far.
Hi, this is Bobby McQuay. I have a question about what are you guys doing after 5? Because your properties is another property where activity seems to really pick up in the mid portion of the day.
Yeah, that's something that we've noticed as well. And so in the past, we have had security that would be stationed at one of our buildings here at either 907 or 917. Typically, it was at the 917 building where we were having a lot of issues at. So we had someone that was checking everyone in the lobby. And so that was after hours from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. And so that is something that I'm in discussions with my supervisor to try and get that back on, as these issues are kind of getting a little out of hand again.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were some reports, and I'd have to say I witnessed it a few times where residents were bringing out tables out in front. Again, innocent game of dominoes and such, but the activity was just a lot of people in and out, around, some drinking, but again, just maybe a little bit too much attention for the buildings. Were you aware of some of that going on, TJ or Colin?
To maybe not to that extreme extent. However, we've noticed even during the day and then at night, we've been getting phone calls from tenants, especially as of recently. So within the last 2 weeks is when we've been kind of notified from tenants mentioning these, and that, you know, with that sometimes leads to fights and things like that.
Right.
So because of that, now we're starting to kind of take a little bit more extreme steps. And that's why I think the next appropriate step would to be have security on site overnight to kind of stop that. Because unfortunately, when we're out, that's the only way that we can. Because over the last few months, regardless, we have been posting signs, notices, but you know, now we're calling every time we see it here. We told tenants to call, and then I think the security is kind of the ultimate, you know, prevention in that.
Right. Well, it's good to hear that tenants are calling you and also calling MPD in regards to the problems. That right there says a lot, and will help definitely get things under control sooner than later. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
So next property here, Elizabeth. 2848 West Wisconsin. Calls for service.
It's going to be 2 nuisance calls, batteries.
And DNS.
Yes, we have multiple orders, exterior, interior.
So I know at one point, officer, that this property was under nuisance, and do I recall correctly that that expired and we are starting all over again in the series of getting this property back to a nuisance status?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Since we haven't had any meetings since, I believe, March, has somebody went back to do calls of service, or is this property still being watched by yourself, CPU, someone to stay on top of anything that has happened over the last several months?
Yes, we actually get a monthly report called the multiple occurrence report sent to us in the beginning of the month for any building, whether it be residential, a business, any type of building in District 3 that has 3 or more calls. So this address does come up on it, and we take a look at the calls and see if it's nuisanceable. And it's not just these addresses, like I said, it's district wide. So it does stay on our radar.
Okay, and so it's been that quiet, not to have anything as far as nuisance.
Yeah, currently it doesn't have enough to nuisance the property.
Right.
There's calls for service, but not nuisance eligible calls.
David, can you answer, and maybe you can't right now, again, the condition of the outside of the building is probably probably the worst I've seen it in my 29 years in this area. With, windows never closed, lawn getting to 2 feet tall, trash, garbage, people. Are there any orders that are past due? Are we close to any fines? Are we on anything like that as far as a track to have pressure from DNS on this location?
So on the interior odors, those are just about to start now. As long as the inspector has their PPE and also the complainant has that. Now, as far as the exterior odors, I did look and they are issue a fee and then they go from there. As you know, they'll give a fee, they'll wait 30 days again, and then what they'll do is send it to court.
Okay, I know in the past, back in January, February, we talked about the elevator at this location, but I thought, if I recall, that it did pass. Is there anything new on that?
Yes, at that time, the last time it was passed. That was, again, way back in February. When I looked at recents, I didn't see anything, but I did look at it and the elevator inspector did pass it.
Okay.
Just a quick note, I don't know if there's anyone here that's representing, is Gary on, is representing Palm Tree?
I'm sorry, you came in and out. I didn't understand.
I'm sorry, David, I was wondering, was there anyone that was representing Palm Tree Apartments on the call today? If so, and you just can't chime in, there's a couch in the back, and what we've noticed was some loitering and excessive public drinking. So those are a couple of things that we've noticed within the past week. There's currently a couch right now out in the back.
All right. So Lindsay, so far, no questions or anybody adding any information on properties up till now?
No, but the line is open.
Call now and donate near West Side. Make payments out to Kent Corey. No, just kidding. All right, next slide, please, Elizabeth. .730 North 29th Street. Calls for service.
There's no nuisance calls.
DNS.
Yes, orders, interior.
Okay. Thank you. Elizabeth, next slide. .2809 West Highland Boulevard, Smart Assets Property. Loitering and public drinking has been noted. That's why I made the list today. Calls for service.
One nuisance call and it's for 911 abuse.
DNS.
Yes, there's a cleanup order and it's already gone to referred to contractor because it was not taken care of by the owners.
Okay. Next slide. .2841 West Highland Boulevard. Again, loitering and public drinking. Calls for service.
2 nuisance calls, both for trouble with subject.
DNS.
Again, interior and then also a cleanup order that was referred.
All right. Next slide. Did we have, all right, Elizabeth, did we have one more, or maybe it didn't make the list, 617 North 23rd Street? Okay, No, it's not. No. No, yeah, six oh, okay, we'll get to it to the end. I just want to make sure it was on there because it is a smart assets property. All right, next slide. And if there is anybody here from Smart Assets, when we get to that last property, and then we'll see if you are here and then can comment on any of these calls or complaints. 835 North 23rd Street, loitering, public drinking, calls for service.
There's 5 nuisance calls, entries, threats, trouble with subject, and a battery.
Is that the grandma? Ask if that's the grandson that's causing problems.
Excuse me, Officer Wittenberg, there's a question. Is that the grandson causing problems with the grandma again?
That wouldn't make the list because when it's family related, that's not nuisance eligible.
Okay, thank you.
DNS.
Yes, there's multiple 3 interior odors, and those were back again right before COVID, late February. And so most likely that inspector will go now that they've been the okay to go inside and start checking on those.
Okay. Is there more properties though for Jamila? Okay, I'll wait till the end here. Next slide. 3345 West Highland Boulevard, public drinking, suspected drug dealing, and noise complaint. Calls for service.
There's 7 calls, trouble with subject, noise nuisance, and subject with weapon.
DNS.
We have orders periodic.
Next slide, Elizabeth.
Actually, before we move on to the next slide,
Yes.
we have a question from someone. Was 835 North 23rd Street scheduled for a walkthrough? Oh, and I see MPD has responded. MPD has done several walkthroughs with maintenance and security at 835 North 23rd. Thank you, officer.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and it sounds like DNS will be scheduling that shortly too.
That's correct.
Okay, and then we'll make note that there's still a green board for several months on the front of this location, 3345. And again, if Jamila is here, we can have them answer that concern at the end. Is there any other Jamila properties, Elizabeth? Okay.
If there's anyone here representing Jamila, we have a couple questions. Anything came through the chat, Lindsay? Okay, so Officer Wittenberg, I'd ask, what would be the next step for the 835 property and the 3345 property? Both these properties continue to have draw a lot of public interest from neighbors that make complaints about it. And it seems like they both may have enough calls to consider it nuisance.
So it would be Captain Norman likes to do call-ins first. So what we would do is we call in management, have them come to the district, go over the calls for service, see about tenants, and see first how we can put our heads together, make sure they have standing complaint forms on files, that our bike guys know about it, and then go from there. If I always have a nuisance letter ready for that meeting, just in case the captain wants it issued. But the first step would be a meeting with management and Captain Norman.
Okay, these properties, I believe, were being discussed before COVID, and I would assume nothing has changed over the summertime. Is this something that you can look into further to make sure that, you know, the next step is in process? Because it seems like, again, nothing's changed for several months at these 2 locations, and it's definitely due for calling and looking at these for a nuisance situation.
Yes, I can definitely bring it up to Captain Norman. He is back on Friday. We do, it would probably give me about a week or so for buffering because even though our DNC is smaller, we are still being deployed out on the streets.
Sure.
So I won't be able to make meetings or anything like that until after that week. But I can talk to him on Friday and then see how he'd like to proceed. We are in contact with management very frequently when we go through that multiple occurrence report and get those addresses as well as apartment numbers. We reach out and we say, hey, I see 7 calls for service at 307. What's going on? Who's the tenant? And she puts us in contact with any other people, community advocates, things like that. So.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much.
One last, Officer Wittenberg. Is the 3345 building an assisted living facility?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is 3345 a transitional living facility that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, I don't know.
Okay.
All right, next slide, please. 2501 West Kilbourne. Complaint of current tenants legally dumping trash, tires, other large debris in the yard and behind the garage of 840 North 26th Street. Calls for service.
There are no nuisance calls.
DNS. David, any calls?
No, there's not.
Next slide. 4218 West Highland Boulevard, suspected drug dealing and excessive trash. Calls for service.
There are no nuisance calls.
DNS.
This is on monthlies.
And for anybody that is new or has forgotten, David, real quick, what monthly means?
Basically, what it means is that they've been litigated, went to court, and still have not taken them. So we go there every month to issue a fine if it's not been taken care of.
Thank you, David. Next slide, Elizabeth. 207 North 36th Street, fighting suspected domestic violence. Calls for service.
There are no nuisance calls.
DNS.
No odors.
Next slide, please. 206 to 208 North 36th Street, dumping in the alleyways, suspected drug dealing. Calls for service.
No nuisance calls.
DNS.
We have exterior odors, and then the garbage was not picked up, so it was referred.
Next slide, please. 2225 to 227 North 36th Street, large amounts of trash, abandoned burned vehicles, excessive traffic. Calls for service.
No nuisance calls.
DNS.
This has also been referred for garbage cleanup.
Thank you. Next slide. 1235 North 33rd Street. Complaints about excessive loitering, unsupervised children at night, threatening neighbors with violence, shots fired. Calls for service.
There's one nuisance call for subject with weapon.
Yep, hello.
DNS.
So on this property, there's been always complaints regarding garbage. It's always been referred. And then again today, as recent as the past few days, it has a new complaint on garbage again.
Thank you. Next slide, please. (3302) West McKinley, complaints about excessive loitering, unsupervised children at night, threatened, shots fired, related to family occupying 1235 North 33rd Street. Calls for service.
There are no nuisance calls.
DNS.
Yes, current complaints again for garbage, and that was referred, and then tall weeds and grass.
Thank you. Next slide, please. 822 North 27th Street. Window open, possible squatter up on the 3rd floor. Calls for service.
There are no nuisance calls.
DNS.
No orders.
Next slide, please. 617 North 23rd Street. Calls for service.
There's no nuisance calls.
DNS.
Orders interior.
Is there anyone here from Smart Assets?
Yeah, Brian White from Smart Asset.
Brian, thank you for joining us. You've heard a couple of the things for the 3 locations. Is there anything that you can add on your end?
Well, at 617, we've identified a tenant that we've had police calls in the past. 208, he is under eviction, leaving at the end of September. Sarah, are you here still too, or no?
Yep.
Yeah, is he leaving voluntarily end of September?
Yes.
Okay, and then the battery, I think that was mentioned at Highland. So that female tenant has asked to leave voluntarily for a different location. So it would help with those 2 particular incidences there. Security at the Highlands now is from 8:30 p.m. to 4 a.m. where our security person is actually at the 2841 behind sitting at a table, and then patrolling 2809 to help improve the security.
Okay. Were you aware of people at 617 North 23rd Street drinking on the steps each day?
During the day?
Yeah. I don't know if you can, I don't know if we can see this. If I'm holding it up.
Yep.
I believe you anyway.
He has a caseworker that has started visiting him every other day now since Friday.
Okay, because that was just a couple hours ago. That there's usually 2 or 3 people out there, and at least a couple of them are drinking. And you know how annoying for current tenants to have to ask people to move out of the way. But just want to let you know that, again, just because of location of our properties in the hotel, I'm driving through there multiple times a day. And it's been pretty consistent. And it seems pretty much the same couple people all the time, just so you're aware. I do want to mention also one other thing. The ambassador got a call from a resident at 605 complaining about people in 617. And I got back to the person, and I could only leave a message, so I didn't have anything else in detail, letting them know that it is the same owner of 5, and that the ambassador did not own the property. So just wanted to pass that along, that came from 605.
And Tom Wickers, MUPD. We had, since end of June, we've had 7 calls, 4 trouble subject and a couple call for police.
At 617?
Correct.
What unit?
I'd have to go through each call.
Okay.
But I'm seeing some consistent names in here.
Okay, we will come and get the police reports. I believe we have identified as 208, but I will come get those police reports.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for adding that in.
No problem.
And we have another.
Yeah, this is Bobby McCoy. I have a question about the properties on Highland. Are they, are you still using the same maintenance team?
At 2809 and 2841,
Correct.
we are using, we have a maintenance person who is there about 30 hours a week, but we also use our regular field staff for unit turns and flips as well. So it's a variety of people in the maintenance piece of it.
So would those be the gentlemen that attended the last few landlord compact meetings?
Actually, there is a property manager, Joseph Pipes, who's not a maintenance person, but he's a property manager. He's not a live-in, but he is at the property about 40 hours per week. And then Johnny McDonald, who may have attended,
yeah,
is our maintenance person. Yeah, and he is still there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next slide, if there is any. Businesses.
Before we move on to the businesses, we do have a couple comments that came in the chat. One from Bethany Gonzalez, noting that the tenants at 33rd and 3302 West McKinley are being evicted currently, and that 1233 has court on September 2nd. And then from Pat Curro, he noted that as a valued near West Side property owner, he recommends petitioning the Common Council to require remote cameras and audio surveillance on most multi-unit properties to increase safety and quality of the community, and also recommends the use of a weekly report card available to every tenant in a multi-unit building for landlords to rely on anonymous recording of inside and outside events. It will increase tenant cooperation, satisfaction, and expectations from property owners.
Great suggestion. Yeah. Great suggestion. Let's work on that. All right, so we have Family Dollar, 930 North 27th Street. Calls for service.
I have 3 nuisance calls, theft and entry.
DNS.
I did not get this list. I have one list, so I don't have these addresses at all.
Okay, David, no problem.
Yeah, I didn't have the list either. I'm getting the calls as we're going through right now.
Okay. BP at 1254 North 35th Street, 35th and Juneau.
From my initial look, I can see 5 possible nuisance calls.
And then Gare Bears, 927 North 27th Street.
No nuisance calls.
Milwaukee Food, 2903 West Clybourne.
No nuisance calls.
Jessica, is Jessica on the line?
I am, Bobby.
Okay, Jessica, is there any updates that you could provide with us about the BP 1254?
The only update that I have is we're still awaiting the final court order for the final date that the BP has to shut down. Just so this group, to update this group, the BP license was not renewed. That was litigated in court. And then at the end of the last month, the judge agreed with the city. So it's awaiting the final signature from the judge, and then they will have a certain period of days to completely close up. The city attorney is still awaiting that signature from the judge. So once we have that, then we'll know what the final date is in regards to the BP. In regards to the Family Dollar at 930 North 27th Street, the food dealer's license was not renewed by the Common Council for that property. That is another property. Family Dollar has challenged that non-renewal. It is currently going through the court process. And at this particular time, it is in a briefing status. So Each party has to submit written documentation to the court. I don't expect a decision will be rendered by the court until the end of the year. I believe the parties have until November to kind of finish that process.
Thank you for that update, Jessica.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, next one. Next slide. Next slide, please. And again. And next slide. Okay.
One more again.
Stopping at this, so it looks like the city has put in, not opened up, a new corner park for the neighborhood. And during our discussions last week about this property, we are curious to know, and I'm not sure if David, you would know, or Officer, you would know, in regards to, since this is city-owned property, who polices or patrols or keeps an eye on these properties for loitering and such?
It would be the police department. So our bike guys are able to drive past or any squad sector cars to see if there's any loitering or issues at the park. But we do say we want those calls for service. So if there is an increase in loitering or at a certain time of day or problem people, we want to be told about it also. So we want neighbors and citizens to call in if they're seeing it excessively.
Okay, okay. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby.
And just to add a little bit to the photos, I've gotten a lot of calls. Well, I've gotten a few calls from residents that live on the block, homeowners that live on the block, and their gripe is with the store, but not necessarily the store. They're saying that because the store is open, then the excessive loitering outside, that they see multiple open air drug deals going on all day long, in their opinion. However, when I was doing some work in the area, I noticed that there was a lot of loitering at the store, and we've since had a meeting with the store owner, and he has agreed to do a lot better with making calls for service to move the guys around. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay.
All right, so I'll explain this slide quickly. I know we're creeping up on our 1 o'clock. The ambassadors continue to do work in the community, walking around all 7 neighborhoods, reporting what they see as far as blight. The city of Milwaukee has changed over how you report online calls for services. Under the old system, there was 150 cases total reported. 46 of those cases was completed, 100 of them was still opened. And as you can see, it was 95 litter and debris reported, 2 graffitis, potholes, 32, and 21 other cases of what we identify as blight within the community. In the new system, there's been 56 cases reported, and there have been 32 closed. The city still is a little bit behind on some of the work, but overall, I believe that this guys like David and other inspectors within the neighborhood that will be able to kind of get a hold of some of the overgrowth that's really overgrowth and encroachment that's been going on around in our neighborhoods. Any questions or concerns, you can contact me offline about the blight reporting.
Bobby. Next slide. Is this doing good in the neighborhood? Do we have a?
Right now, you're just going to see a series of slides Elizabeth is going to go through, It just shows some of the improvements that's been made in the neighborhood and some of the businesses that continue to do well. So Elizabeth, if you can go to the next slide. This is RK Liquor. As you can see, the before and the after picture, they've made substantial improvements to the property, and they invested, you know, upwards of about $40,000 to $50,000, and they're going to continue by getting new concrete on the side and in the back of the facility. It's a liquor store, but again, the owner is real receptive to doing the work that's required, and he's also complying with the automatic demands too. So this is an example of someone that's working well with us in the neighborhood. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. That was just a close-up look showing the difference. Next slide. This is GRIFOLS Plasma Center. They always seem to maintain their facility really nice. You see they have a shaded area in the back. You know, the thing to point out about GRIFOLS is that you find loitering a lot of places, but you never really see loitering there because their security guard monitor the cameras, and anytime there's someone out there that shouldn't be out there, they're there to ask them to leave. So they're doing good in the community. There's a place where it gets a lot of business, but there's no loitering that really goes on there. Next slide. You're gonna see a series of slides with Wendy's. Some with the issues of loitering. Wendy's is one of the areas on 27th Street that within our bottleneck that has a lot of traffic, and for some reason, as you can see, they like to stand and sit up under the shade tree. You can go ahead and roll it, Elizabeth. This showing that they did put up, per the meeting that we had with the management, they put up the no loitering signs, and we explained the process to them. We met with Jessica Ballinger, the assistant district attorney in our area, myself, Keith Stanley, the ambassadors met with Wendy's management and went through how they can escalate complaints when you have excessive loitering and people that just won't cooperate and leave the area. Next slide. This is AAA Transmission. Again, this place, they always really keep a nice facade, nice front, nice paint. Really hardly any trouble there ever that I can remember. So they are a good community neighbor. They're constantly making sure that the outside of the building looks fresh and neat and clean. Next slide. This is Mattress City. Currently, it looks really yucky, but we've been working with the owner to negotiate with them of allowing the NWSI partners and local artists to turn this space into a community art hub. We will be doing some work on the facade in the front within the next 2 weeks. So we hope to turn this into something that's a blight, into something that's community friendly. Next slide. And this is the NWSI partners. We've given out 49 of these signs that was requested by residents as something that they could put in their yards to say, hey, we call the police. Basically what they wanted something to say, and that we're watching you. So cooperation with the NWSI partners, the ambassadors, we handed out 49 signs within the NWSI partners boundaries. Next slide. So at this point, we would have had additional topics and news, but I didn't know how long the PowerPoint would go, the presentation would be, but we kind of right on the mark at 3 minutes over right now. So is there anything that anyone wants to say that coming up through the charts, Lindsay? Through the chat, I mean.
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. Ken,
All right.
anything?
Thank you, Bobby. Yep. No, thank you all for joining us today.
Next virtual will be September 10th, 1 o'clock, same place, unless COVID disappears. And then we'll be meeting at the Ambassador Inn. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of the week.
And can I throw something in there?
Yes.
Despite my obvious shyness?
Yes, go right ahead. Is this Mark?
Yes. I found out about a place. I suppose I could turn on the video. I found out about a place called Chicago Furniture Warehouse. They collect used furniture from hospitals and office buildings and stuff like that, stuff that's still in nice shape, beds, dressers, you name it. And they can furnish an entire apartment for a family, 2, 3, 4 person family, beds, everything but I think sheets and towels and stuff like that. But even pictures on the wall, kitchen utensils, couches, end tables, stuff like that, $50. But you have to transport them from Chicago, and people cannot work with them directly. You have to work through an agency. Right now, the only agency in Milwaukee that does that is it's a county housing organization. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but I'm trying to expand that a little bit. But $50, you can furnish an entire apartment.
That's amazing. Mark, when you get a chance, can you email Lindsay all the information so that we can get it out on our monthly, lack of better words, come on, help me, Lindsay, webinar or our newsletter?
Yeah, we can share it in our newsletter and on our webinar.
Excellent. Anything else?
No, sir, all done. Good to see you.
Anything else before we sign off? Going twice, 3 times? All right. Have a good day, everybody. Bye. Oh, I wanted to say thank you, Elizabeth.